So everybody wants a MacBook, but nobody wants to pay their prices of Apple, right? Well, stay with me because I tried to convert this old Chromebook into a MacBook Air. And honestly, this was not the same, and it is not the same as a MacBook Air, starting with the hardware. So what it is running in this is an Intel Celeron N4020, and it also has 4 gigs of RAM and like 62 of storage available after the operating system being installed. So the real question was not only, can I install real Linux in this machine? No, it was more of, can I make this thing actually feel premium and like Apple? So what I did is I wiped out the Chromebook operating system and I installed Zorin operating system. I've heard a lot about Zorin and I wanted to try it out. So, and I also researched like what are ways to make an operating system look like Apple. And Zorin was one of those, so yeah, that's what I tried to do. So then after installing Zorin OS, I then customized it to make it look the closest it could to a Mac. And honestly, it came out better than I expected. And the dog, the icons, the theme, the animations, and the whole desktop was just looking like a fake MacBook, which is what we want. We want it to look like a MacBook, at least the closest possible, even if it's a fake MacBook. And of course, it's not a real MacBook, but for this hardware, it is kind of crazy. This is what I love learning about IT in public. I take something old and try to convert it into a project, which is the main reason why I wanted to make this channel. Subscribe to my channel if you wanted to learn more about IT with me and see what we get into, and maybe I motivate you to build the same. So I'm gonna start with explaining why I chose Zorin OS. So the first big decision was, what Linux distro should I use? So I wanted something beginner friendly, clean, modern, and visually polished right out of the box. Which is something when I investigated that a lot of people would say that, and that it was really good customizable to use Zorin. So that's why I chose Zorin OS. So Zorin is one of the Linux distributions that feels more approachable for people coming from Apple or Windows. The layout is always clean, even since before adding all of the customizable things I added, the layout was already pretty clean. It was straightforward, the settings were simple to adjust, and it gives you a strong foundation if you want like a look. And in my case, I used Zorin Core because there is a paid version of Zorin too. It is, I think, I don't remember if it was called Zorin Pro, but yeah, there's a paid version which gives you more templates, more themes and stuff, and it makes it easier to make it look like a Mac. Now, we've never worked on a Chromebook before. This part is really important. A Chromebook is not just a cheap laptop with a different operating system. It is designed around ChromeOS, and it really wants to stay in that world, which is frustrating when setting it up. So one of the first lessons on this project was that you cannot just throw in a Linux USB, a bootable USB, and expect it to just change magically into the Linux operating system. So no, that's not how Chromebooks are built. There are, from the get-go, there are boot restrictions, there are firmware limitations, and there are a lot of steps that you have to understand before you make any of those changes. And that part alone teaches me something valuable. A lot of IT is not just installing things, it is actually understanding how the device is designed, what it allows by default, and what has to change before your plan actually works. So once I got past the Chromebook barrier, the next stage was installing Zorin. And this is where the project started to become something real, because up until this point, it was just an idea. But once Zorin starts installing, then you start realizing you're actually changing the whole identity of your machine. And you're taking something that was built for an ecosystem and wiping everything out and making it into a completely different system. And that is one of my favorite things about Linux. It gives all hardware a second life. Instead of looking at this Chromebook and seeing just a low-end machine, now Linux let me look at like a canvas that I can do whatever I want with it. And that doesn't mean whenever And that doesn't mean that whenever you install some distro or something in Linux, it will just run smoothly and perfect. No, there still has to be a lot of troubleshooting. There still was a lot of headaches that I had, and yeah, you have to be patient, and in the end, it will go good. So when the fun started is when I had Zorin installed. I went through all the troubleshooting process of having to make the Chromebook in developer mode and having to mess around with the terminal and stuff on a Chromebook. Then after finally getting into Zorin OS, it was fun because then I had my setup, and then now I had to convert it into an Apple machine. But how do I do this? Well, using themes created by other people, right? So that's what I did. I looked up what themes there were on the for Zorin OS, and I found the ones I'm gonna put in the description. So I changed those themes. I changed the icon packs, the cursor, the dock, the top bar, and I went for a minimal premium look like Apple. And this is something a lot of people don't think about. The look on a desktop is not one big setting, it's just a lot of layers. So from the operating system to the desktop environment, to the theme, to the icons, to the extensions, to the spacing, to the wallpaper, it's the little behavior that changes, like scrolling and even dock placement. And once you understand those layers, Linux becomes less intimidating. So in conclusion, after finishing all the setup, this was the part that surprised me the most, just seeing the results of how everything was. Because for this type of hardware, the results came out better than I expected. The dock gives it that fake MacBook look. The icons feel way cleaner. The whole desktop just feels more premium. And instead of looking like a budget Chromebook, it actually feels like a laptop with personality. Now, of course, the hardware, it is still the hardware. It is still not a very capable machine. But visually and as a learning project, this thing transformed way better than I expected. So was it actually worth it? I would say yes, because now I'm thinking on doing even more projects with this machine and just taking it to the limit. And I think people who own Chromebooks right now, this would be essential for them, because it's a way to make your Chromebook look better and a way to have a better operating system that is more customizable. Is for what I saw when I was looking at the Chromebook when it was still a Chromebook, when it had the Chromebook OS, there was a lot of apps that weren't working anymore, and it's such a closed environment that it's great if you like just for regular use. So that's why just changing the operating system was amazing, because then now I can install anything I want. I don't have like those anymore. Now, if you ask yourself if it's actually worth doing, but your goal is to turn a weak hardware into the M4 MacBook Air or MacBook Pro, then no, this is not magic. The process we did today is not magic. It's not gonna do that. Your hardware is still being a CPU, a Celeron CPU with 4 gigabytes of RAM and 62 gigabytes of space, which is nothing. So, but if your goal is to learn more about Linux, understand how devices boot, explore more desktop customization, and basically give an old machine a new life, then yes, this was totally worth it. Because what you gain is bigger than the laptop itself. You learn how the operating systems work. You learn about Linux if you never saw it before, if you only used Windows your whole life or Apple your whole life. You learn how the customization layers fit together and work together. And you also learn that a lot of the tech becomes less scary once you actually play with it. And that is really the reason why I like projects like this. I'm not trying to act like I know everything already. There was a lot of times that I didn't have any idea of what I was doing with this project, but that's how I learned. And then that's how you can learn too. I'm learning right now in public, showing my projects and testing ideas and just sharing the process so that people who are also curious about IT can see that you don't need to be perfect or have years of experience or even have perfect hardware to start building things. Sometimes all it takes is just one project, just one. One weird idea that you think that it might be useless, and one experiment that teaches you way more than you expected. So no, this didn't turn out to be a real MacBook, but as a fake MacBook project, as a Linux customization project, and as a way to learn more about IT, I would call this a win. So please subscribe to my channel to learn more about IT with me. I would like to know what your thoughts are on this. I would like to know your thoughts about Linux, about other distros. What have you tried? What do you use to your daily basis? Do you use Linux? Do you use Apple? Do you use Windows? Now, would you change from those operating systems to the other ones? Would you try others? Tell me all about it. I want to listen to you. I want to hear you. What are your thoughts on these topics?